I just want to give a couple of examples of some big things that have implications for infringement upon people's rights. One is halfway around the world and doesn't directly impact our culture this much, but it does impact certain European countries and cultures. And this is over in Iraq. The Islamic State, headed by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and that has recently taken the city of Mosul, the leaders have published a fatwa declaring that all young women in recently conquered Mosul, and this is whether they're Christian or Muslim, all the young women must submit through Sharia law to female circumcision.
Oh my!
When I heard this, I was really skeptical because I don't know everything about this, but I thought that female circumcision largely only existed on the continent of Africa.
Negative.
That this wouldn't be something that would be expected of people in Syria or Afghanistan or places like that.
Negative. It is endemic throughout the Muslim world. It's been heard about, from African nations where there's more of this distinction between the Christian subculture and the Muslim subculture, and just because of the way the news gets out and that sort of thing. There are tens of millions of Muslim women. I think it's well over 100 million Muslim women affected by this worldwide.
Well, there is some question, Glenn, as to the veracity of the claim. There's a story over at AlJazeera.com that says that the Islamic State group has ordered females in its territory in Iraq to undergo female circumcision, according to the UN's resident and humanitarian coordinator in Iraq, but it's a claim rejected by activists that are linked to the group. Jacqueline Badcock said Thursday the decree was issued to residents between 11 and 46 years old living in and around the city of Mosul. The decree would potentially affect 4 million women and girls, she said. This is something very new for Iraq, particularly this area, and is of grave concern and does need to be addressed. This is not the will of the Iraqi people or of the women in Iraq, these vulnerable areas covered by the terrorists.
And this is very much adamantly, and for example, there are Muslim families in Europe, like in Britain, there was a famous case just that was on mainstream television, where the family shipped the girl to a Muslim country for this procedure, and then would return home to Britain. So actually, European families actually send their girls for this into countries where it is legal.
I can't imagine it's particularly popular. I mean, this is a horrific thing to do. This is genital mutilation. It's absolutely horrible to do that to people.
It's a forced clitorectomy with further mutilation of the external genitalia.
But here's the other side of the story, Glenn, just since you brought it up. The decree was posted on Twitter, but its authenticity was rejected by Islamic State-affiliated websites and Twitter accounts. When asked by Al Jazeera when the group would issue a statement, one Islamic State sympathizer said they have better things to do with their time than retracting bogus claims. However, local reports suggest it was not issued by the Islamic State group, and a statement had not been issued by its media division. Okay. So there's some question about that.
Even if I concede that is completely true, it is nonetheless that this practice does go on, is highly prevalent worldwide, even if it's not in this case.
I wouldn't say it's highly prevalent.
I
wouldn't say it's highly prevalent worldwide. Female circumcision?
Yes.
Well, Glenn,
in Muslim nations, absolutely. All the Muslim countries all over the world, absolutely.
This is new information to me, Glenn. I'm sorry. I was of the opinion.
I want to see if we can get somebody from Muslims for Liberty on to talk about this and see if there's any truth to the claim this is in any way worldwide popular. Thank you, Glenn, for the call tonight.
Just Muslim world popular. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was African. I mean,
Toll-free number, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. You can take control of the airwaves here and bring up whatever's on your mind. This is Free Talk Live. Claim was made a moment ago that there's been some sort of fatwa that has been issued in some Muslim area of the Middle East that is supposedly, and there's some question into the veracity of this, but supposedly ordering women to submit themselves for circumcision. The story from Al Jazeera says that there's some major questioning whether this is legitimate or not. Even people involved with the Islamic State, I believe is the group that allegedly issued it.
ISIS or ISIL.
Yeah. Even people involved with that via Twitter accounts and websites are saying, no, that's not true. That is not what happened at all. And then the caller, Glenn, went on to suggest that the practice of female circumcision, which is genital mutilation, and so is male circumcision, by the way. But the practice, he says, is fairly widespread in what he claims are Muslim countries. So I actually have a real-life Muslim on the line here. He is Will Culley from Tennessee.
Oh, you got him.
Will, from Muslims for Liberty. You're on Free Talk Live via Skype.
How you doing?
Hey, you're an actual Muslim? So what do you think of those claims?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised by them. It's something that you hear a lot coming from, you have like this cottage industry, billions of dollars a year, and websites, speakers, most of them welfare whores, living off of DHS grants, that they spread this around via the internet and speaking engagements and stuff like this. They're polemics. They have no background in Islamic history or theology at all. Wait
a minute. You mean watching an episode of Bill O'Reilly doesn't count as getting background in history and Muslim stuff?
No, not really.
No, okay.
Not particularly. But basically, female genital mutilation, female circumcision, is a cultural practice that predates Islam. It is prevalent in certain areas of sub-Saharan Africa, where the practice is prevalent among all cultures, indigenous tribal cultures, secularists, Muslims, everybody in this area. It's just it's a cultural practice that unfortunately was brought into Islam by certain sects of Muslims. Now there is one specific.
Well, lots of religions will take on sort of practices that are cultural when they convert people. I mean, Christmas is a really good example of this under Christianity, and frankly, circumcision is it's only done here in the United States, but lots of Christians do it, and it's kind of silly. No Christian church has come out really. No Christian church of note has come out against it.
They should,
but they should. I mean, it's ridiculous that Christians are out there, trimming willies. I mean, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Well, there's actually nothing that supports. There's one hadith tradition that has been ruled da'if, which is weak or fabricated by all of the mu'adith, the scholars of hadith of note, from Ibn Taymiyyah to Malik, Bukhari. It's not mentioned in any of the well-known books of tradition. So, and even that hadith doesn't talk about female genital mutilation as it's practiced. It actually talks about removing the hood, but not the clitoris. So it actually talks about creating a situation where the clitoris would be more exposed, not cutting it off. So even the tradition, which, as I stated, is seen as a fabrication, something that came along later that was attributed, not that the Prophet ﷺ even advocated it. He just mentioned, hey, there's this tribe and they do it. Okay. So, and they do it in this way. So even that tradition isn't an advocation in any way. It's just stating there's a tribe, they do this.
So there was another claim the caller made, and I imagine that on most places, most radio shows, when someone calls in to make claims like this, they're just accepted as, oh, those awful monsters, those Muslims, how dare they?
Well, it's really difficult to know what goes on. How in the world? I mean, I could have traveled to sub-Saharan Africa, wandered around, and still not known what they do to their 12-year-old young women. This is a difficult thing to sort of confirm or deny.
Well, you can confirm that whether it's not a popular thing to do by talking to actual Muslims and getting their opinions.
And so we are.
Yeah, it's actually, if you were to go on to like your average Muslim Facebook group, like, hi, we're Muslims, or Muslim something, just a group of Muslims on Facebook, and went in and were like, well, what's your opinion of female genital mutilation? You'd get run out of the room. People would just be like, it's barbaric, it's horrible, it's disgusting, it's not a part of our faith. Yep. It's a cultural practice. Like, people, it's something that is rejected by 99.99% of Muslims. It's just this one specific area where it's something that's practiced by that culture. It's practiced by the Muslims.
Right, which is why when the caller earlier said that he's, I don't know where he got this claim, but claiming that Muslims in Europe are sending their children to these other countries to have their genitals mutilated.
That's a story from like this week that in fact this happened, but they're Africans.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he made it sound like this is like the thing for European Muslims to do, which just sounded ridiculous on its face. Because I know Muslims, and you guys, in my experience, are caring people who are genuinely interested in your families and would never harm them, from my understanding.
Well, even my wife is from Africa, and she's intact.
Well,
tell a little more information than is necessary. But,
my wife, if you say that, people are going to immediately wonder. So yes,
yeah, my wife is from Kenya, and her sister, her mother, and none of them have ever had this practice committed to them or anyone in their family. So, and they're from Kenya, not quite sub-Saharan Africa, but still, they're in Eastern Africa, and it's not something that's practiced at all where they live.
So you spoke of this cottage industry a few minutes ago that's trying to pump up these stories and propagate them through the mainstream. Is it? I'm maybe this would be conjecture on your part, but is it a timing thing, or does once in a while does one of them just catch, and the people who would be interested in a story like this grab it and run with it? Do you think?
Well, basically, and it's not really conjecture. There actually have been investigations into it. Different organizations have tracked the money. A lot of the money comes from people like Adelson,
sure,
and people who are who are really big in the pro-Israel crowd.
Yeah,
and they also are like major funders of the "Let's Hate the Muslims" crowd.
Oh, the timing, right? So I'm thinking there is a possible motive for the timing, because I'm wondering, like, is there something about right now? But of course, there's something about right now going on in the Middle East that would encourage people like that to pump stories like this. But I was just wondering if this is an ongoing operation, and once in a while, one of them just catches, and gets some traction in the mainstream.
We've got like 3 or 4 voices that are in the mainstream: Pam Geller, Robert Spencer, Brigitte Gabriel, Bill Warner, Frank Gaffney, and Daniel Pipes. These are people that are on Fox News on a regular basis. They're on AM radio shows on a regular basis. They are mainstream. I mean, it sucks to have to say that, but these are people that are completely polemics. Most of them, their life stories have been found out. Like, oh, I was a terrorist. Well, actually, there's no record of any of the terrorist attacks that you committed in any of the countries you say you committed them in. So but people still believe them, and they're getting huge grants of money from Homeland Security to go teach this stuff to the police department in your neighborhood.
Wow, yeah.
To spread this around and create this kind of animosity. A friend of mine, there was a small altercation. I mean, literally a very small altercation between a husband and a wife. A mess was made. He was angry. She called the police. Police come out. She's like, he's upset. I just want, someone here to arbitrate because we're not communicating with each other.
Oh, yeah, that's what the cops do. They arbitrate and facilitate communication.
Yeah. They see the headscarf, and immediately the officer says, he's beating you up, isn't he? She's like, no, he's not. He's like, no. I know how you people are.
Oh, wow.
And this is because there are people, they're getting paid your money. They're, the taxpayers' money is being given to these organizations who have no qualifications as terrorism experts, who have no qualifications as theology experts. And they're allowed to spread this stuff around. They go to churches. I mean, they used to be all over the national, like, quote unquote, liberty event circuit.
Wow.
You'd see tabling, they'd be speaking, you'd see them at CPAC and LPAC. And,
good info, Will, from Muslims for Liberty. That's Muslims, the number 4, Liberty, is it .org, Will? Muslims for Liberty, great group.
Sir.
Thanks for coming on on short notice, too. I literally just reached out to him and said, hey, can you comment on this? I appreciate that. So I'll let you get back to your evening, and thanks.
No problem at all.
Yep, assalamu alaikum.
More
coming up here. Hour 2 is on the way.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.